Welcome to the Metamorphosis Show. Welcome friends new and old. My name's Thomas, and today we're going to address this very straightforward question. Can you do a pull-up? The reason why I'm doing this today is because I've found over the years that the majority of people can't do one, and it's kind of a crucial skill to be able to have decent symmetry in your body and to help you move well. I find in particular yogis do a lot of pushing and have tremendous pressing development, but they neglect the pulling. I also see it in runners. There's a great amount of science applied to the posterior chain and making sure the hamstrings are equal in strength to the quadriceps, that the glutes are well developed, but nobody is paying attention to the pulling. And I think there are probably a few reasons. Number one, you can't see your back, so naturally you focus on the show muscles, right? Everyone wants arms, everyone wants a decent chest, but no one's really paying attention to the back, and it's a huge mistake. I also want to say that I'm not going to be able to, I have terrible eyes, so I can't really see who's joining this live and what the questions are being asked, but ask questions and I will be sure to answer them online after. So you can see the rings in the background, and I'm going to go through a bunch of variations and help you figure out where you are in your pulling strength and show you how to progress. And if you already can do a ton of pull-ups, great. I'm going to show you some stuff that's a little bit more advanced. And let me think if I have anything, and I'm kind of winging this, I'm sure you know, and there's a lot of noise in the background, so I hope this all comes through. So again, the reason we need to focus on pulling is because most people are focused on pressing. Just about anybody at least knows how to do a push-up, but I think you rarely come across somebody who doesn't train specifically that can do a pull-up. And I can't imagine why you would ever neglect that, specifically if you were to fall into, a pool full of sharks with lasers on their back, and every time they swim fast, like lasers shoot out, and all you had to do was pull yourself over the edge to get out, you couldn't do it. These things could happen, so keep that in mind. So what I want to show you first, I'm going to start with, I didn't even know the frame was that big. I have my trusty stool here, and I'm going to start with the easiest progressions and then go into the more challenging stuff. And then I'll show you some things you can do to specifically train pulling muscles if you can't really get a pull-up at all, if that's just way out of bounds. So for those of you that can, and just anyone paying attention, the way that I like to start it is with an eccentric only pull-up. So you can use a step or something to get into that position. Well, I guess I should talk about the rings real quick too, or maybe I'll cover them at the end. We'll just jump right into this. You start at the top, and then you're going to slowly lower yourself down using those pulling muscles to get to the bottom. You start at the top, you get into that position, you're squeezing everything nice and tight. You'll have a tendency to go out here. You can do this with a straight bar, you can do it with rings. You slowly lower yourself down to the bottom position. Now that's if you can't do any sort of concentric action on the pull. Now if you can, or you can sort of get a pull-up, the next best thing I think is to do a jump pull-up where you give yourself a little bit of assistance off the ground. I don't think you need to get a band. You can certainly do that if you have access to those, that's great. But I'm going super low impact here. If you have something you can pull up on and give yourself a little boost, you just sort of hop up into that top position and slowly lower. Again, that's just a little jump, and you come down nice and easy. Jump pull-ups, it doesn't really seem like you're getting much, especially if you're a little bit heavier and you're really having to jump a lot, but it's a nice segue into a full pull-up. Now, I used to do pull-ups with my feet tucked behind me, and I was able to work up to quite a few that way, but I've found that since I started focusing more on gymnastic strength training, having them in front of me in a hollow body position is actually made me much stronger, and it definitely works all these muscles in your midsection as you do it. So here's the old way, and I think this is an easier variation. Your feet are tucked up behind you, and you pull up and slowly back down, right? But the way that I've changed is to go into a hollow body position, which means I'm trying to get my body in sort of a modified C shape. So I'll try and do that by going from a dead hang, pointing my toes out in front of me, and then pulling up. And what happens is your entire midsection is just going like this in order to pull that off, which is really cool. You know, I've already forgotten a couple things. The very first thing you should do probably before jumping into pull-ups, I'm going to show you from the back. This is just a scap pull, and I love this to warm up. The pull-up. From a dead hang, you're going to just draw your shoulder blades down and together. It's a very short range of motion, right? But what you're doing is you're stimulating all this tissue around your scapula and really warming up all that connective tissue and muscle in order to do the full pull. So it's a dead hang. You want to come up a couple inches and back down. You know, you do like 8 to 10 of these is a decent way to warm up that shoulder girdle. Another thing I want to point out is if you're one of these characters who's doing pull-ups like this, I got bad news for you. You're not doing a pull-up. This is the absolute most difficult portion of the lift, right? With your scapula completely splayed out like so at the bottom. This is the weakest portion. So if you're not coming all the way down, you're missing out on a bunch of strength, and you're not really training through that entire range of motion, which if you're a bodybuilder and you're just trying to pump up one section is completely appropriate. If you're trying to tell people how many pull-ups you can do, stop lying. So we started with the assisted off the bench, then we did the jump, you know, as the next in the progression. Then you can do knees tucked underneath, then the hollow body position with your toes pointed out in front, and then you can kind of get a little bit fancy. I feel like once you can do 3 sets of 12 hollow body position pull-ups, you can sort of start moving on to much more challenging progressions. I think one in particular, especially if you're taller, is the L-sit. Man, this one killed me for the first still. This is a brutally challenging variation that uses the leverage of your body. So what you do is you come into that L-sit position and pull up from there, which it's really hard to narrate and do that movement. What that does is put a lot of stress on your lower back and your midsection. But I gotta tell you, my midsection has never looked better since I started doing these variations that really challenge the dreaded core in ways that no crunch could ever do. So the L-sit would be one. Then you could start, you know, I'm just gonna grab a dumbbell and show you. You could start actually weighting this movement. You can hold this between your legs. You can do a belt and let it hang from there. You could do a weight vest. I'm just gonna put it between my thighs to show you. Again, you can do any position you want so long as this thing doesn't smash your toes. But I go from a dead hang, right, and then pull up. And that's a good way to really start to improve your pulling strength once you can do plenty of body weight work. God, what else do I want to say about the pull-up? There's so much to say. Then you can move into more difficult variations. It'll be more along the lines of like a one-arm pull or a one-arm chin. God, this is called an archer row, and you may have seen this before. I'm not by any means great at it, but it's a pull and an extension on the other side. So you pull up and extend the opposite arm. It's a little bit advanced. Obviously, I'm not even very good at it. But if you're working towards that one arm chin, it's kind of a big deal. So I'm gonna show you now the horizontal row from a hang. So the reason why I'm showing you this from behind is because I'm gonna actually go into a tuck. So once you're in this position, you can really start to row in an extremely challenging manner mechanically, right? So you're at a full extension here, you're gonna feel your scapula pull apart, and you pull as high as you can before lowering. And it's just the next level pull-up stuff. That sounded ridiculous. It's just a more challenging variation of a pull-up. I'm gonna talk a bit about, gosh, I wish I could interact. It's just too far away. I hope you're getting something out of this. So I want to quickly talk about the rings as opposed to a bar. I did all my training early on a bar, and you know what? So I am gonna I'm gonna come close right now and remind me to talk about variations with the rings if you can't do anything like a pull-up. Here I come. I'm gonna come a little bit closer so I can see who's on this. And I hope you're getting something out of it, like I said. Okay, so rings versus the bar. Pastor Nar, welcome. The rings allow for a more natural range of motion with your elbows and shoulders. Okay, so I did pull-ups for years with a straight bar, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. If you have access to a straight bar, use it. I think ultimately, if you're gonna keep doing this, which you should definitely try and get a hold of some rings. So with a straight bar, you're here, watch, I'm gonna use this trusty broomstick, and I have to, let's say the bar's fixed, I have to pull through this range of motion. My elbows and shoulders are all locked, right? Throughout this range of motion, okay? But if it's not fixed, if it's like a ring, as I pull down, or let's say it starts like this, right? As I pull down, my elbows are allowed to rotate in, my shoulders are allowed to rotate in, which is gonna be a lot better for you long-term for shoulder and elbow health. If you've been doing this a while, you know that tendinitis is pretty common. Tendinosis, which is the chronic version of that, is also pretty common. Now, if you start doing heavy weighted pull-ups regularly, and you move up to some appreciable weights, your elbows are gonna take a beating. Your shoulders are gonna take a beating. It's gonna happen on rings too, but I think, and I've noticed to a much lesser extent since I've changed, because it allows for that more natural range of motion from top to bottom. These rings in particular are made of plastic, and they're called Nayoya, and you can find them on Amazon for like 30 bucks. I'll put a link to them in the comments, but they're super cheap. They go anywhere. I've taken these all over Southern California. I'll probably start traveling with them too, because I can do a bunch of pulling and pushing movements through that. So rings instead of a straight bar. The importance of pulling as opposed to just pushing. I think I've covered those things. If you have any questions, again, go ahead and ask. I'm all about getting to these afterwards, since, like I said, I have terrible eyes and I can't really see you know what, why don't I just look? Yes, Daniel, Eric, you do need to train those pull-ups. Shosan, thanks for joining. Hey, Mikey, you guys are all very welcome. I'm gonna talk about, oh, this is it. I'm reminding myself. I need like cue cards or like a teleprompter. But so what I'm doing now is I'm gonna show you an easier variation if you can't do a pull-up at all, which is many of you. So you can bring these rings to wherever is comfortable. I'll show you a couple different variations. If you're pretty weak, let's say they're at your, what is this, just below shoulder height? I'll make it even easier. Let's say you're super weak, you haven't done anything in years, but you want to start doing this. Well, so that you don't get too discouraged, you can put these up nice and high, right? Like, look, these are super adjustable, and that's why I really appreciate them. But the higher they are, the easier this is going to be for you. And the further you stand back, the less leverage there is, right? So let's not make it too easy. I'm setting this so now they're just about shoulder height. I'm leaning back directly under where they hang from, and I'm able to pull up and get something out of this in a way that's super adjustable and will allow for me to make a ton of progress over time, right? The important thing is that at the bottom you're getting a full stretch, and at the top you're getting a full contraction. There's way too much of this in lifting and exercising, period. People doing half ranges of motion, unless you're training for the Mr. Olympia or you already have a ton of muscle, don't do that. It's not for you. You need to get strong through the entire range of motion. So you're leaning all the way back, you're stretching your back, you're coming up and squeezing all that musculature in the top position. So the further I move forward, the more I come directly underneath this. See how the angle's changed? The harder this gets, okay? And that's the beauty of the rings, is that you can bring them up and down. Now, I can bring them even closer to the ground and really start to make this challenging. Again, we'll start where we were before. That big lean back, right? And now I have a much greater range of motion. Now I'm able to squeeze my upper back, get a deep stretch, and there's much more challenge in terms of leverage there. It gets really tricky when I go directly underneath, and then I'm going to show you something else you can do. By the time you're putting this bench underneath your feet, you will have progressed to being able to do at least jump pull-ups. But I just want to show you what you can do here. Full stretch. Now my feet are elevated. Hopefully they aren't too gnarly. And I pull up and do the same thing. I want to squeeze my glutes, come all the way up, squeeze my back at the top. But this is so challenging, you know? So we've got ring rows in different mechanical positions. And I hope that gives you a better idea of what you can do to train your back with very little equipment. If you have this broomstick and put it between two chairs and you have different sized chairs, you could do the same thing. I just like rings because it really makes for a mobile exercise apparatus where you can train mostly the whole body, and I'll talk about other parts later. But if you don't train your back right now, so some of you know I used to visit my 105-year-old grandmother every week. And so I got a really good glimpse into the future of what happens to first world citizens as they age. And if they're not continually being mobile, if they're not training their bodies, well, the result is entropy, absolute entropy. And you have all these people sort of living existences where they can't move and they're being stuffed full of drugs. And I think the easiest way to at least prolong the good life is to train the stuff that you never pay attention to. So again, the back is neglected mostly because you can't see it, but it has everything to do with how you move, and the aches and pains that begin to crop up as you get older, I think are generally attributed, well, it's a lot of things, right, depending on the person, but a lot of it has to do with being completely detrained. You atrophy certain areas, you stop using them, and then things get worse and worse, and they compound because you're not actively trying to make your body stronger. You're not continually working through long ranges of motion, which means the body gets tight. And so what are you doing right now? I mean, not right now, but how many hours are you spending like this per day, right? Or like this, you know, with your head hunched down and your hands hunched here, and you're tapping away and you're doing work, getting stuff done. And that's good, but you still have to remember that your body is not designed for that. It never was, and this is a really recent phenomenon. So I think that about covers it. Are there any questions about doing pull-ups? Any questions about getting started? I think I went through the easiest variations, but if you have questions right now, I'm gonna hang out for about, I don't know, a few more minutes and see if I can answer them. No yo-yo, I said. You know, there are a lot of different just pull-up bars you can attach to a door or install outside. Really easy to make homemade ones. But if you train, let's say you started training your pull-up 3 times a week, or some pulling mechanism. It doesn't even have to be a pull-up, right? It can be a vertical pull, it can be a horizontal pull. The whole goal is to train the back side of your upper body on a regular basis. Sorry, I'm just now. Oh, hey Joyce. Hey Jesse. We're talking about the importance of pull-ups and just the pulling mechanism in general, and how in most people it's completely neglected. And I didn't try to malign any yogis out there. It's just something I see in my friends that are teachers and practitioners of yoga. Even the strongest ones struggle with the pulling. And these are the people that are doing handstands effortlessly. So you know they're incredibly strong. Their relative strength is off the charts. But their ability to just do a vertical pull with their body weight is very poor. And I think that that's something that all yogis should address. If you have yoga friends that want to chime in on this, I would love to hear from you. What are you doing actively to improve your pulling strength? Because I already know you're doing a ton of stuff for your pressing, right? Your front delts, your triceps, your chest, incredibly strong. Your midsection, incredibly strong. So it only makes sense that you would also focus on the back of your torso as well. It's a big deal for shoulder girdle strength and symmetry. Okay. Thank you everyone for joining. Hey Don, hey Adam, I appreciate you guys checking this out. Do you have any specific questions about pull-ups? I'm gonna wait until you do so that I can try to answer it and do my best. It's something that I have always trained at least a few times a week, and it really helps for, hey man, how are you? Thanks for posting. It's just made my upper body complete, and I have a lot fewer aches and pains since really focusing on the pulling mechanism equally, if not more so, than pressing. Again, young men or older men, everyone desperately wants a good looking chest and arms, and so that becomes the focus. And people spend, oh, there's chest day, there's arms day, right? People focus entirely on breaking down the body like this and putting the brunt of their energy into enhancing this one part. The back muscles, this collection of musculature is much bigger and has way more potential to make you healthy than just a couple of, pecs that look nice in a shirt, or at the pool, or whatever your goals are. I think I'm going to wrap this up because I'm not getting a bunch of questions right now. But Lincoln, you should definitely have a question about pull-ups or hair. That's about all I have to say. I think I addressed everything that I wanted to talk about. If you have questions, please put them in the comments field below, and I will make sure to answer them. I'm also going to post up an article that I just wrote about getting outside to do your training and all of the benefits. I've talked about that before, but since I've started doing the majority of my training outdoors, it has made me stronger. It's made me look better. It's made me feel better. So I hope that you got something out of this. Let me know if I can answer any questions for you, and I will see you next time.